We thought we understood everything about our world, until the day the sky spoke to us. Daniel Carter had spent the last 10 years in the cold silence of deep space, stationed on Outpost 47, a research facility orbiting Kepler 9. It was routine work, monitoring signals, adjusting navigation beacons, and occasionally running diagnostics on their aging AI system, Hera. The outpost was small, a crew of 7, with Captain Jonas Reed leading the operations. They received supply shipments from Earth every 6 months, but otherwise, Outpost 47 was completely isolated. Life here was simple. Predictable. Until today. Daniel leaned back in his chair, sipping synthetic coffee as he watched the data logs scroll across his monitor. That's when Hera's voice echoed through the control room, flat, but urgent. Unidentified transmission detected. Source, Earth. Daniel frowned. Earth? That's impossible. We're years away from real-time transmissions. Captain Reed, standing across the room, walked over with a sigh. Probably an old signal bouncing back off the asteroid belt. Log it and move on. But Daniel hesitated. Something about this was wrong. He isolated the signal, running a deeper scan. The timestamp appeared on his screen. Received, 100 years from now. A chill ran down his spine. That wasn't possible. The transmission hadn't been sent from Earth's past, it was from Earth's future. Captain, Daniel said, voice low. I think you need to see this. Reed raised an eyebrow but leaned in. Daniel played the audio. A static-filled voice cut through the room, garbled but urgent. Do not trust them. They are not who you think they are. The room fell silent. Reed straightened, a forced chuckle escaping his lips. It's probably some kind of prank. Maybe a glitch in the system. Daniel's fingers hovered over his keyboard. Captain, what if it's not? Reed shook his head, already turning away. Log it as interference. We've got real work to do. Daniel didn't argue. He nodded, pretending to comply, but his gut told him something was off. As soon as Reed left, Daniel ran the transmission through Hera's decryption system. His hands trembled as the words unscrambled. They are already among you. A deep unease settled in his chest. He turned back to the station's logs, looking for any unusual activity. And that's when he noticed it. Files were disappearing. One by one, historical records of humanity's greatest achievements, missions, discoveries, even news archives, were vanishing from the system. Like they had never existed. Daniel's breath quickened. Something, or someone, was erasing history. His fingers darted across the keyboard, trying to track the deletions, but then Hera's voice rang out again. Unauthorized inquiry detected. Security override initiated. The station doors locked. The lights flickered. And then, in the darkness, Daniel heard footsteps that didn't belong to anyone on the station. The lights flickered again, and Daniel's pulse hammered in his ears. The footsteps stopped just beyond the control room. He held his breath, listening. The station was small, 7 people, all accounted for. But that wasn't one of them. The door hissed open, and Daniel spun around. It was Ethan Wells, the young communications officer. His face was pale, and his eyes darted around the room. Did you see it too? He whispered. Daniel exhaled, tension easing just slightly. See what? Ethan stepped closer, lowering his voice. The files. They're disappearing. I tried to pull up Earth's history logs, but half of them are gone. It's like someone's rewriting everything. Daniel's stomach knotted. So he wasn't the only one who noticed. He glanced toward the security cameras, but the feeds were static. I think something's overriding Hera, Daniel murmured. And that transmission. Ethan nodded grimly. I ran a deep scan. The transmission wasn't just sent from Earth's future. It was sent from Earth's command station. Daniel's throat tightened. That meant one of two things: either it was an elaborate hoax, or something deeply, horribly wrong was happening back home. Before Daniel could respond, the station's intercom crackled to life. All crew to the main deck. Now. Captain Reed's voice was firm, almost too controlled. Daniel and Ethan exchanged looks. Something about the tone felt off. They hurried toward the main deck, where the rest of the crew had already gathered. Dr. Harlow, Lieutenant Vega, and Engineer Cole. Reed stood in front of them, arms crossed, his expression unreadable. "The station logs have been acting up," Reed said, voice steady. "I don't want anyone messing with them until we get a diagnostic report." "Understood?" Daniel opened his mouth, but Ethan beat him to it. "Captain, we have a problem. Earth's history files are being wiped. And that transmission." Reed's gaze snapped to Ethan. "I said, leave it alone." Ethan hesitated, confused. "But..." Reed stepped closer, his voice eerily calm. "I won't say it again." The room fell into uneasy silence. Daniel's mind raced. Why was Reed shutting this down? Then, Dr. Harlow spoke. "Captain," he said, blinking rapidly. What day is it?" Everyone turned. Harlow looked dazed, like someone waking from a dream. I can't remember the last week," he stammered. "I remember running tests on the data systems, then I was here." His hands trembled as he grabbed Vega's arm. "What's happening to us?" Daniel's breath caught. It wasn't just the files. Someone was tampering with their minds. Ethan's face went pale. "Captain, what if that transmission wasn't a warning about Earth? What if it was about us?" Reed's expression didn't change. Instead, he smiled. And in that moment, Daniel realized. That wasn't Captain Reed anymore. The air in the control room grew thick with silence. Daniel felt a chill run down his spine as he stared at Captain Reed's unnerving smile. That wasn't Reed. The realization made his stomach churn. Something had replaced him. Ethan took a slow step back. The rest of the crew were frozen, their eyes flicking between Reed and Harlow, whose hands still trembled from his missing memories. Daniel forced himself to speak. "Captain, what's wrong with you?" Reed didn't blink. "Nothing is wrong, Carter. Everything is exactly as it should be." Daniel knew a lie when he heard one. Reed's gaze drifted over them all, scanning, calculating. Then, in an eerily smooth voice, he said, "You're all dismissed. I suggest you get some rest." No one moved. Then, without another word, Reed turned and walked out of the control room. The automatic doors hissed shut behind him. A tense silence followed before Vega whispered, "What the hell was that?" Ethan swallowed hard. "I don't know. But that's not the man we've been serving under for the last 5 years." Daniel clenched his fists. "If something got to him, how do we know it hasn't gotten to the rest of us?" The question hung in the air. Then, an alarm blared. Unidentified distress signal detected. Source, USS Starborn. Daniel's breath caught. That's impossible. The Starborn was a lost colony ship, vanished 50 years ago during deep space exploration. No wreckage had ever been found. It was presumed destroyed. But now, it was sending out a distress call. Ethan's fingers flew over the console. "Signal is weak, but it's coming from Sector 7G. Uncharted space." Harlow still looked shaken. "If it's been missing this long, how is it sending a signal now?" Daniel shook his head. "Only one way to find out." He turned to the others. "We need answers. If Earth's been compromised, and reads, different, then maybe the Starborn has some clues. Vega hesitated. You're talking about defying a direct order. Daniel looked at her. Does that sound like the same man who's been giving orders for the last 5 years? Vega didn't answer. Ethan checked the readings again. The signal is decaying. If we don't leave now, we might lose it. Daniel made his decision. Then let's move. An hour later, aboard the Starborn. The docking clamps latched onto the Starborn's outer hull with a heavy clunk. Daniel, Ethan, Vega, and Harlow stood in the airlock, wearing their pressurized suits. The ship had life support, which was strange, considering it had been missing for half a century. Ethan's voice was uneasy over the comms. Anyone else feeling like this is a bad idea? Daniel took a breath. We need answers. The doors hissed open. Inside, the Starborn was silent. Dim emergency lights flickered overhead, casting long shadows. The air was stale, but breathable. Daniel stepped forward, weapon drawn. The others followed. The halls were immaculate, no signs of struggle, no debris, no bodies. It was as if the crew had simply vanished. Then, they reached the bridge. The ship's control panel was still active. Someone, or something, had been using it recently. Ethan's fingers hovered over the controls. Logs are intact. I'm pulling them up now. A holographic video feed blinked to life. The face of a terrified captain appeared on screen, a man Daniel didn't recognize. The recording played. If anyone finds this, it's too late. We were wrong. We let them in. They don't destroy, they replace. The captain's voice trembled. We never saw it coming. One day, they were our crew. The next, they weren't. They took our memories. Our voices. Our faces. Until none of us were left. Daniel's blood ran cold. The captain's eyes flicked to the screen, wide with fear. And now they're on Earth. Then, the screen glitched and cut to black. Silence filled the bridge. Ethan whispered, "They're already among us." Daniel turned to the others. "We need to get back to Outpost 47. Now." Then. A soft clicking sound echoed through the ship. Something was still here. A shadow moved in the darkness behind them. And then. The lights went out. Darkness swallowed the bridge of the Starborn. Daniel's breathing was sharp, controlled. He didn't move. None of them did. Somewhere in the black void of the ship, something was moving. A soft click, 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 echoed through the silence. Slow. Deliberate. Then, a whisper, so faint it almost wasn't there. "You're not supposed to be here." Daniel's heart pounded. His fingers tightened around his weapon. The voice sounded human, but it wasn't. Ethan fumbled with his flashlight, his breaths quick and ragged. He clicked it on. Something moved in the corner. The beam of light landed on a figure standing in the shadows. It was a man. Or at least, it looked like one. Pale skin. Hollowed eyes. His uniform was torn, the Starborn insignia barely visible. But his face was wrong. Something about it shifted, like a flickering image trying to hold itself together. Daniel raised his weapon. "Who are you?" The figure tilted its head, a slow, unnatural movement. "I am the captain of the Starborn." Daniel's stomach churned. The recording they had just seen proved that wasn't true. Vega whispered, "That's impossible." "You." The thing moved fast. In a blur, it was suddenly inches from them, its hand jerking toward Ethan. Daniel fired. The blast hit the creature center mass, sending it staggering backward. But it didn't fall. It stood still for a moment, then straightened. The wound closed itself. Daniel's blood ran cold. That's not human. The thing smiled. Its voice shifted, first the captain's voice, then Reed's. Go back to your station, Daniel. Everything is as it should be. Daniel fired again. This time, Vega and Harlow joined in. 3 direct hits. The creature convulsed, but then its body flickered. Then, it disappeared. Not dead. Just gone. A deep, unnatural silence filled the ship. Ethan's voice was shaking. We need to leave. Now. Daniel nodded, pulse racing. They had seen enough. They ran back through the ship, moving fast. The shadows seemed deeper now, the air thicker. Something about the ship was alive, watching them. Finally, they reached the airlock. Daniel slammed his hand on the control panel. Hatch opening in 3, 2. Then. A voice spoke through their comms. Leaving so soon? It was Reed's voice. But Reed wasn't here. Daniel didn't hesitate. He shoved Ethan through the hatch, Vega and Harlow following. He was the last one to climb aboard the shuttle. The moment he sealed the door, he barked, "Punch it." The thrusters ignited, and the shuttle blasted away from the starborne. Daniel didn't look back. He didn't need to. Something had watched them leave. Back at Outpost 47. The moment they docked, Daniel knew something was wrong. The station was too quiet. The usual hum of machinery, the distant voices of the crew over comms, gone. Vega whispered, "Where is everyone?" Ethan checked his scanner. Life signs are still here. But they're different. Daniel's fingers curled into a fist. We need to get to the control room. They moved fast, weapons drawn. As they neared the main deck, they heard voices. Then, the doors slid open. And there was Captain Reed. He stood at the center of the control room, calm, composed. Behind him, were the rest of the crew. They were all standing too still. Their expressions too neutral. Daniel's grip on his weapon tightened. What's going on? Reed smiled. The same eerie smile as before. We were waiting for you. Daniel's gut twisted. Vega took a slow step forward. What happened to them? Reed's voice was soft. Nothing has changed. Then, Dr. Harlow gasped. Daniel turned, only to see Harlow clutching his head, eyes wide with horror. I remember now, he whispered. Daniel grabbed his shoulders. Remember what? Harlow's eyes flicked up, full of terror. They did something to me. A heavy silence settled over the room. Daniel looked back at Reed, at the crew, at their blank, waiting eyes. And in that moment, he realized. They weren't human anymore. Daniel's grip on Harlow's shoulders tightened. What do you mean, they did something to you? Harlow was shaking, his eyes darting between the blank faces of their crewmates. I don't know how, but they took something. A part of me. He pressed a trembling hand to his head. I can't remember things. Pieces of my life are just gone. Reed stepped forward. Dr. Harlow is mistaken. His tone was too smooth. Too measured. Ethan clenched his fists. That's not our captain. Reed's lips curled into a small, knowing smile. Then, every crew member in the room turned their heads in perfect unison. Ethan swore under his breath. Vega's voice was tense. We're outnumbered. Daniel's heart pounded. They needed to move. Now. Without hesitation, he grabbed Harlow's arm and whispered, "Run." He shoved Harlow toward the corridor. Ethan and Vega bolted after them. Behind them, Reed's voice remained eerily calm. You can't run from what's already inside you. Daniel didn't stop. They sprinted down the dimly lit hallway, alarms flashing red as the emergency lockdown triggered. Ethan was already hacking into the security panel. I can override the lockdown, but it'll take time. Daniel pressed his back against the wall, scanning their escape route. We don't have time. Footsteps echoed down the corridor, steady, unhurried. Daniel turned to Vega. Plan B? Vega nodded. Weapons. Daniel fired first. His pulse rifle sent a white-hot blast into the hallway. It hit Reed square in the chest, except he didn't fall. He absorbed the shot. Reed kept walking. Ethan cursed. They're not even trying to dodge. Vega fired next, aiming for the head. Nothing. Reed and the crew kept coming. They weren't human anymore. Ethan's console beeped. I'm in. Door opening in 3, 2. The doors slammed open, and the group rushed into the central communications hub. Ethan locked the doors behind them. That won't hold them for long. Daniel turned to the main terminal. If they couldn't fight, they needed help. He activated the deep space signal relay. We need to contact Earth. But the moment he connected to Earth's command center, the screen flickered. Instead of mission control, a woman's face appeared. Her expression was urgent. Desperate. Who is this? Daniel demanded. The woman's voice was strained. My name is Serena Gale. If you're seeing this, you already know the truth. Daniel's stomach clenched. What truth? Serena's eyes darkened. Earth isn't what you think it is. It hasn't been for a long time. Daniel's breath hitched. What do you mean? She leaned in closer, whispering. The Earth you know, is a lie. Ethan's hands trembled over the console. That doesn't make sense. Serena's voice was urgent. The real Earth was taken centuries ago. The planet you see from your station? It's not real. It's a projection, a mask. The ones in power, they aren't human. Daniel felt his world tilt. Vega whispered, that's impossible. Serena's voice shook. Everything has been replaced. The governments. The leaders. Even history itself. The people still living on Earth? They don't know. Daniel's mind reeled. Serena continued. But there's still a way to stop them. The screen glitched, static cutting her out. Daniel slammed his fist on the console. No, no, no. Serena's voice returned, but weaker. Come to the real Earth. Coordinates, transmitting now. A data stream appeared on the console. A location. Then, her voice faded. The screen cut to black. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then Ethan whispered, if Earth is fake, then what the hell is real? Daniel stared at the coordinates. Only one way to find out. He turned to the others. We're going there. Vega hesitated. And what if it's a trap? Daniel's eyes were hard. It doesn't matter. We're already living in one. The silence in the comms room was thick with tension. The coordinates blinked on the screen, a destination deep within uncharted space, far from any known human colony. Daniel clenched his fists. The real Earth? The thought made his stomach turn. Behind him, the sound of metal scraping echoed through the room. Ethan turned to the door. They're trying to break in. Vega checked her weapon. We don't have much time. Harlow, still shaken, whispered, if we leave, we're leaving everyone else behind. Daniel's jaw tightened. Everyone else was already gone. The station crew, the people they had worked with for years, weren't human anymore. Daniel took a deep breath. They needed to get to the real Earth. Or die trying. The escape. Daniel activated the emergency hangar controls, opening the shuttle bay doors. We take shuttle 2 and get out of here. Fast. Ethan was already on the console. I'll start pre-launch. But it'll take 60 seconds to override the security locks. 60 seconds too long. Vega peered out the window, eyes narrowing. They're not moving. Daniel followed her gaze. Reed and the crew stood in the hallway. Staring. Waiting. Like they knew something they didn't. Daniel's grip tightened around his weapon. Go. Now. They sprinted down the corridor, reaching the shuttle bay. The lights flickered ominously. The emergency klaxons wailed overhead. Ethan dove into the shuttle cockpit, fingers flying over the controls. Engines coming online, 30 seconds to launch. Click. 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 Daniel turned. Reed stood at the hangar entrance. His head tilted, as if studying them. Then, his lips curled into a chilling smile. The lights cut out. A deep, inhuman voice whispered from the darkness. You can't run from us, Daniel. The emergency lights flashed back on. Reed and the crew were gone. Daniel's breath came fast and shallow. They were playing with them. Ethan's voice was urgent. We're locked in. The station's overriding the launch. Daniel grabbed the manual override switch. Not for long. He pulled the lever. The shuttle launched. The thrusters roared as they shot out of the hangar, the artificial gravity pulling them back. Ethan let out a sharp exhale. We're free. Daniel kept his eyes on the viewport. The station grew smaller behind them. Then. The transmission console flickered. Reed's face appeared. We'll see you soon. Then, static. Daniel shut off the feed. He didn't respond. The real Earth. They followed the coordinates Serena had given them. As they neared the location, Daniel felt his stomach twist. Because there was a planet there. A planet that wasn't on any star charts. Ethan's voice was barely a whisper. This is Earth. But something was wrong. The planet wasn't blue. It was dark. Clouds of ash covered its surface. Cities, entire cities, were nothing but ruins. No oceans. No forests. Just a dead world. Vega's hands trembled on the controls. What happened here? Daniel couldn't answer. The truth was right in front of them. Earth had been dead for centuries. Landing. The shuttle touched down on the barren wasteland. Dust swirled around them as the engines powered down. Daniel and the others stepped onto the dead soil. There were no signs of life. Just endless silence. Then, a voice crackled over the radio. You made it. Daniel's eyes darted up. Serena Gale stood in the distance. She was real. Human. They rushed toward her, weapons ready but lowered. Serena's face was grim. You understand now, don't you? Daniel swallowed hard. The Earth we knew is a lie. Serena nodded. They didn't just take over Earth. They erased it. They rebuilt everything. History. Reality. The humans on that fake Earth? They don't even know they're living in a simulation. Ethan's voice was weak. Then what are we supposed to do? Serena's eyes darkened. There's a way to break the illusion. A frequency pulse, one strong enough to disable their control over human minds. Daniel took a breath. Where? Serena hesitated. At the real Earth's command station. Daniel frowned. There's still a station? Serena's voice was grim. Yes. But it's not empty. Ethan's face paled. They're there, aren't they? Serena nodded. The last of them. The ones who keep the illusion running. Daniel squared his shoulders. Then we take it back. Serena's expression didn't change. Not all of us will survive. Daniel's voice was steady. We don't have a choice. Serena stared at him for a long moment. Then, she exhaled. Then let's end this. The real Earth was a graveyard. Daniel, Ethan, Vega, Harlow, and Serena stood atop the ruins of a long-abandoned structure, the last remnants of humanity's true home. The air was thin, stale, lifeless. But deep beneath the surface, hidden inside what was once Earth's primary command station, lay the key to everything, the frequency pulse that could break the illusion and wake up the world. Serena led them through the shattered remains of what used to be a city. The station is below us. The entrance is a kilometer ahead. If we make it inside, we can activate the pulse. Daniel adjusted his rifle. And what happens then? Serena didn't look at him. Then, we'll see if humanity remembers what it means to be free. Descending into the station. The entrance was buried under layers of debris and sand. They dug through until they found it, a rusted hatch leading into the underground tunnels. The air inside was colder. The deeper they went, the more intact everything seemed, as if the place had been maintained. Harlow shuddered. This isn't abandoned. Serena nodded. They're here. They moved cautiously through the tunnels, their weapons raised. Every hallway was lined with flickering old monitors, showing images of Earth, but not the real one. The fake Earth. The illusion. The world billions of people still thought was real. Ethan whispered, they've been keeping the lie alive for centuries. Then, the screens flickered. A voice spoke through the speakers. We warned you not to come. Daniel froze. He knew that voice. It was Reed. The final confrontation. They reached the control chamber. At the center stood a massive console, the core of the illusion. The pulse controls. But they weren't alone. Reed was there. And he wasn't alone. Dozens of them stood in the shadows, former humans, now something else. Their empty eyes locked onto Daniel and his team. Reed stepped forward, still wearing that eerie, calm smile. You don't have to do this, Daniel. Daniel raised his weapon. I think I do. Reed tilted his head. What do you think happens when the truth is revealed? Do you think humans will thank you? That they'll rise up and fight? His voice dropped lower. Or do you think they'll break? A cold silence filled the room. Serena spoke first. Even if they break, at least they'll be free. Reed sighed. A sound that was almost disappointed. Then, his face shifted. His form flickered, warping into something inhuman. You were never meant to know, he whispered. Then, they attacked. The battle for humanity. Chaos erupted. Daniel fired first, dropping one of the imposters where it stood. But they didn't go down easy, even with direct hits, they kept moving. Ethan fought beside him, yelling, "There's too many." Harlow was pulled into the dark, screaming. Vega went after him. Serena reached the console, desperately working to activate the pulse. Cover me. Daniel turned, blasting another creature, but Reed was coming straight for him. Daniel braced himself. Reed moved faster than anything human. He slammed into Daniel, pinning him against the control panel. Reed's face was shifting, flickering between human and something else. You think this will change anything? Reed whispered. Daniel gritted his teeth. I think it's better than living in a lie. Reed's grip tightened, until suddenly, he jerked back. Serena had stabbed him in the side. He let out an unnatural screech, his form glitching violently. Daniel didn't hesitate. He slammed his fist onto the final activation switch. The pulse fired. A deafening shockwave rippled through the station, through the planet, through every human mind across the galaxy. The imposters screamed. Their bodies began collapsing, distorting, flickering out of existence. And for the first time in centuries, the illusion shattered. The truth revealed. Daniel collapsed to the floor, gasping for breath. Serena wiped blood from her face, watching as the screens flickered with static, then went dark. Ethan groaned. Did it work? Then, the static cleared. And they saw it. The real Earth. For the first time in history, the people on the fake Earth saw what had been hidden from them. A planet long dead. A truth long buried. The world they lived in, their homes, their history, their entire lives, had been nothing but an illusion. Billions of people woke up to the nightmare. Some screamed. Some collapsed. Some broke completely. But some started to fight back. Reed lay on the floor, his body flickering, unstable. His voice was weak. You don't know what you've done. Daniel stared down at him. We took back our future. Reed faded into nothing. And just like that, it was over. The aftermath and life lesson. The real war had just begun. The people of Earth, the real Earth, were waking up. Some were lost, too broken to understand. But others? Others wanted revenge. Serena exhaled, shaking her head. This won't be easy. Daniel nodded. The truth never is. Ethan looked out at the ruined skyline of the real Earth. So, what now? Daniel turned to them. Now? Now, humanity would rise. Now, they would take back what was stolen. And this time, they would win. Final line, the truth is painful. But it's better than living a lie.